5 days after my C-section, my husband pressed $20 into my hand and told me to take our newborn home by bus. Then he climbed into my Maybach with his mother and sister and drove off to dinner. When his car stopped beside my bus, I saw him laughing. That was when I called the one person Derek never knew he should fear. What did that phone call set in motion? The taste of hospital antiseptic still clung to my throat when the nurse wheeled me toward the discharge doors. Every few steps, pain pulled across my cesarean incision. Owen slept against my chest, so small that his head fit inside my arm. Derek kept checking his watch. The nurse asked whether the car was close. He gave her a dependable smile. "I've got the car downstairs. I'll take care of them." The doors closed behind us. The smile disappeared. He said his parents and Paige were waiting for dinner, and he could not arrive late with a crying newborn. Then he pushed a $20 bill into my hand and pointed toward the bus stop. For a moment, I thought the medication had made me misunderstand him. He said there were leftovers in the refrigerator. I could heat them when I got home. The Maybach sat at the curb. My father had given it to me before my marriage. It belonged to my family trust. But Derek had driven it almost every day since Northbridge began raising money. Investors noticed expensive cars. Derek liked what the Maybach suggested about him. He had my car. I had $20, and our son was 5 days old. His family appeared from the side entrance. Paige climbed into the front seat. His mother settled into the back with a drink. His father laughed at something. Derek said, "No one asked whether I needed help." Derek drove away. Getting onto the bus felt like climbing stairs with a knife against my abdomen. I held Owen close and tried not to make a sound. An older woman near the front stood before I reached her row. She took my bag, helped me sit, then tucked a scarf around Owen. She introduced herself as Evelyn Carter, a retired postpartum nurse. She did not ask why my husband had left me there. She watched my breathing and asked whether I had someone safe to call. At the next light, the bus slowed. The Maybach stopped beside us. Through the glass, I saw Derek laughing with Paige. His mother lifted her drink. None of them looked toward the bus. That was when the truth became simple. Derek knew how to be gentle. He simply did not choose to be gentle with me. Evelyn followed my eyes. "Honey, silence won't make a cruel man kinder." Later, I would understand that people expect marriages to end with an affair or a terrible fight. Mine ended in silence, while I watched my husband laugh through the window of a car that belonged to me. I called my father. "Dad," I whispered, "I want to leave him." His answer came without hesitation. "You and Owen are not going back to that apartment. Tell me exactly where you are." He told me to get off at the next stop and wait inside a busy store. A black SUV was coming. When I saw it turn the corner, I did not yet understand that I was leaving more than an apartment. I only knew I would never let my son be treated like a burden again. The black SUV stopped beside the curb, and Walter Hayes stepped out before the driver shifted into park. "Grace, your father sent me. Let's get you and Owen somewhere safe." A postpartum nurse followed him. She checked my pulse, looked at my face, and asked whether the pain had grown worse on the bus. No one told me I was overreacting. No one sighed because I needed help. By the time we reached Greenwich, my body had begun to shake. My old room still held the armchair where my mother used to read to me. A bassinet stood beside the bed. There was warm soup on the nightstand, clean blankets, and a doctor waiting to examine my incision. When he asked where it hurt, he did not blame me for hurting. That was what broke me. I lowered my face into my hands and cried while my mother held Owen. I was not crying because the house was large or because the sheets were soft. I was crying because everyone believed me without demanding that I defend every detail. As I rested, pieces of my marriage returned in a different light. Derek had once been patient. He listened when I spoke, and made ordinary evenings feel important. After Northbridge completed its first funding round, he began caring more about appearances. He kept the Maybach keys in his coat and said the car suited a chief executive better than a wife staying home. During my pregnancy, he slowly removed me from financial conversations. Whenever papers needed signatures, he called them routine. His mother and Paige joked that I was lucky to have married a man with such promise. I had called it stress. Warning signs rarely enter a home making noise. They arrive wearing reasonable names, saving money. Being busy. Protecting you. Let me handle it. That evening, my father sat across from me while I told him everything. He never interrupted. "Tonight, you rest," he said. "Tomorrow we call your doctor, a family law attorney, and the hospital. We document everything." Then he asked one question. "Did Derek know you were still under post-surgical restrictions?" "Yes. He signed the discharge papers as the person taking me home." The house phone rang before my father could answer. Derek complained that his parents were still at the apartment. The refrigerator was empty, and I had embarrassed him. He ordered me home before morning. He never asked whether Owen was safe. In that moment, I understood that Derek was not searching for his wife and child. He was searching for the person who had stopped serving him. I looked at Walter. "How long does a hospital keep its exterior security footage?" He said, "An attorney could send a preservation request that night." I placed the remaining $20 bill inside an envelope. It became the first piece of evidence in my file. Next morning, the envelope sat between Rebecca and me on the desk. Inside were the $20 bill, the bus receipt, and the discharge papers. Rebecca said memory could be challenged. Dates and timestamps were harder to argue with. She asked me to tell the story in order. Not that Derek ignored me, not that he never cared, only what happened and when. I gave her the discharge time. I explained my post-surgical restrictions. I showed her where Derek had signed as the person responsible for taking me home. Then came the cash, the bus route, the traffic light, the Maybach beside the window, my call to Dad, and the messages Derek sent afterward. Rebecca kept writing. I had believed silence was how a wife kept her dignity. Now I understood that silence without evidence only gave a controlling person room to rewrite the story. We called Evelyn. She remembered that my face had gone pale. She remembered my hands shaking around Owen and the way I pressed a palm against my abdomen. Whenever the bus stopped, she had offered to call an ambulance. She heard me tell my father that I wanted to leave my husband. Evelyn did not call Derek cruel. She had never met him. She described what she had seen. Rebecca said that made her statement stronger. Soon, preservation notices went to the hospital and transit authority. Rebecca requested the exterior camera footage, the discharge record, the bus payment history, and the traffic camera time from the intersection. She also asked that the Maybach location data be preserved if necessary. Then we saved Derek's messages. "Stop embarrassing me and come home. My family is hungry. You took my son without permission." He called Owen my son, but never asked whether he had a fever, whether he had eaten, or whether he was sleeping. Rebecca confirmed that the Maybach had been purchased before my marriage and remained in the Bennett family trust. Derek was only an authorized driver. I signed the notice ending that permission. Then I asked her not to take the car yet. I wanted every step handled properly. I would not give Derek the chance to call this revenge. While reviewing the trust records, Rebecca stopped at one document: Spousal Consent and Personal Asset Support Agreement. It stated that I had approved family assets as additional support for Northbridge Systems. An electronic signature carried my name. The date was the night before my C-section. I had never seen it. The next morning, a data specialist called Rebecca. The approval had not come from my phone. It had come from a computer in Derek's office. The technical report arrived before breakfast. The document had been created on a computer assigned to Derek. The approval email looked almost identical to mine, except for one extra letter near the end of the address. Someone had copied my electronic signature from an old tax form. The false agreement claimed that I had received independent legal advice. It also stated that I had willingly allowed my private family assets to support Northbridge's credit line. The approval had been sent while I was in the hospital preparing for surgery. That detail hurt more than the money. Derek had not simply used my name. He had waited until I was frightened, medicated, and focused on bringing our child safely into the world. Then he had turned my identity into a financial tool. My father joined us in the study. He explained that Bennett Capital did not run Northbridge, but one affiliated fund had provided a limited letter of support. He had agreed because he wanted to respect my marriage and my judgment. He had believed I was standing behind Derek. He had not known my signature was false. He had not known Derek was telling investors that Bennett Capital stood fully behind the company. My father asked what I wanted him to do. Anger pressed against my ribs. For a moment, I imagined one phone call taking everything from Derek. Then I looked at Owen sleeping beside the window. "We withdraw only what belongs to us," I said. "We report what appears fraudulent. After that, the facts decide what happens to him." That was when I understood the difference between power and abuse. Power was not the ability to crush someone. Power was having the strength to do what was right, even when anger made cruelty feel easier. Rebecca moved quickly. She disputed the signature in writing. The family fund withdrew its conditional support. The bank was asked to pause new lending. Northbridge's board received a request for an independent audit. The company was also told to preserve Derek's computer, email records, and internal files. Nothing was released to the press. I did not call Derek. I knew he would deny everything, blame someone else, or delete whatever he could reach. Guilt followed me. Northbridge employed people who had mortgages, children, and lives. They had not put me on that bus. They had not forged my name. I asked Rebecca to make one thing clear. The audit should separate Derek's conduct from the rights of innocent employees. I wanted the truth uncovered. I did not want a fire that burned everyone nearby. 2 days later, the auditors found payments from Northbridge to a small consulting company. The registered owner was Paige Cole. The payments were labeled strategic consulting fees. There were no reports, no work product, and no signed service agreements. Rebecca placed 3 bank statements in front of me. One transfer had been made on the day I entered the hospital. The payment description contained only 2 words: family preparation. Family preparation had nothing to do with Owen. The auditors traced the transfer to Paige's consulting company. Part paid the deposit on a luxury apartment. Another part covered the family dinner Derek had rushed to after leaving me at the bus stop. The company money had paid for the evening that humiliated me. Once the auditors kept looking, the rest began to come apart. Northbridge had recorded future revenue as if the money had already arrived. Payments had been routed through Paige's company without real contracts or completed work. The credit line had stayed open because of the false consent carrying my name. The bank froze the unused credit line. The board asked Derek to step away from daily control. The next funding round was delayed. Outside auditors corrected the revenue figures. Several vendors stopped extending credit. A major client demanded proof that Northbridge could finish its work. The chief financial officer began cooperating with investigators. The company's attorneys also confirmed that my signature was under formal dispute. Northbridge did not begin failing because my father pulled one check. It began failing because the truth had been hidden for too long, and the whole structure could stand only while no one looked closely. Derek still sent messages telling me to come home. Then a cardboard box arrived. Inside were my old robe, personal items, Owen's care notebook, wedding photographs, and a handwritten letter. Derek said the apartment was a mess. He complained that his mother had been forced to cook for herself. He accused me of embarrassing him in front of investors and threatened legal action for taking Owen. He did not ask whether our son was eating well. He did not ask whether my incision was healing. A controlling person does not always panic when you are in pain. Sometimes they panic only when you stop performing the role they assigned to you. I wanted to throw the box away. Instead, I asked Walter to photograph it exactly as it had arrived. He saved the envelope and gave the letter to Rebecca. After everything was documented, I donated the items that could still help someone. I would not let anger destroy useful evidence. Later, Rebecca told me what happened at Northbridge. During a board meeting, Derek demanded to know why the support letter had been withdrawn. Someone explained that the person supposedly backing the loan was disputing her signature. Derek asked who controlled the fund. The answer was Bennett Capital Group. He knew Bennett was my family name. He had simply never cared enough to understand what stood behind it. He believed my father was a retired investor. For the first time, Derek had to face the possibility that the meetings, the bank's confidence, and the doors that opened for him had not come from his talent alone. Rebecca's phone rang before she could say more. Derek wanted to meet me immediately. He called it a family matter and said attorneys did not need to be involved. From now on, I said, anything involving Derek is a legal matter. The meeting took place online, with Rebecca beside me and Derek's attorney on his side. Bai was recovering, and after his threatening messages, no one thought I should meet him alone. Derek appeared from an empty conference room. He wore a suit, but his tie was crooked and his eyes looked red. At first, he tried to sound gentle. He called me Gracie, the name he used when he wanted me to soften. He said he had been under pressure. He called the bus ride a misunderstanding. He claimed he thought I was strong enough to manage it, and reminded me that his family had made the reservation weeks earlier. Then he offered an apology, but only if I came home and helped fix Northbridge. That was when I understood the truth. Derek's apologies always arrived with a request attached. When I did not agree, his voice changed. He said I had overreacted. He accused me of dragging my parents into our marriage and putting hundreds of employees at risk. He said I had hidden my family's identity to test him. Then he claimed I had taken Owen without permission. I did not argue with every accusation. I did not cause the audit, I said. I disputed a signature I did not provide. His face tightened. He said Owen carried the Cole name and he would fight for custody if I refused to return. Rebecca ended the call. She noted the threat and stated that all future communication would go through counsel. I did not threaten him in return. 2 days later, we attended the temporary custody hearing. The judge did not care about my father's money or Derek's title. The court looked at the facts. I had been Owen's primary caregiver. He was a newborn who needed a stable routine. Derek had signed the hospital discharge papers, then failed to provide safe transportation home. His messages focused on food, embarrassment, and my return. Evelyn described my condition on the bus. Derek's schedule was uncertain, and he was under financial investigation. The court granted me temporary primary care of Owen. Derek could request supervised visits after providing an infant care plan and completing an initial evaluation. I felt relief but not joy. The man who once rested his hand on my stomach when Owen kicked now needed supervision to be near his child. Justice does not always feel satisfying. Sometimes it simply gives you a room where you can breathe without looking over your shoulder. I could feel sorry for what Derek had become and still refuse to place Owen in danger. Pity was not responsibility. When the meeting ended, Walter handed me his phone. Paige was live streaming outside my parents' gate. Derek's mother stood beside her, holding a sign that read, "Give us back our grandson." They told viewers I had used money to steal a child from his father. Walter asked whether he should shut down the network. No, I said. Save the video. Every second of it. Walter held the phone in front of me. Paige was crying into the camera, but every few seconds she checked how many people were watching. Derek's mother stood beside her, calling me selfish. 2 guards asked them to leave. I did not go outside. Save the live stream, I told Walter. Mark the time. Back up the gate cameras. Do not touch their phones and do not argue. They had not come to see Owen. They had come to make a video in which they could play the victims. Someone who worries about a child asks whether the child is safe. Someone who wants control asks how many people are watching. Paige read details from my hospital paperwork. She named the hospital, Owen's birth date, my C-section, and the town where my parents lived. Viewers posted threats and demanded our address. Walter called the police. This was no longer a family argument. It was a safety risk. When the side gate started closing, Paige pushed her foot into the opening. Derek's mother shoved a guard and reached for his phone. Paige turned the camera toward herself and claimed the Bennett family was attacking 2 defenseless women. Their own live stream showed otherwise. They had been asked to leave 3 times. The video captured the shove, the attempt to force the gate, and Derek's mother saying they would take the baby by any means necessary. The police arrived after neighbors called. Paige and Derek's mother were taken away while officers reviewed trespassing and harassment complaints. I felt no satisfaction. Owen was only weeks old, yet his grandmother and aunt had turned him into a weapon. The police cars had barely left when Rebecca called. Derek had filed for an emergency custody review. He claimed I had fled in a panic, taken our newborn out of the city, and shown signs of postpartum depression. He said my parents were controlling me and using money to keep him away. His filing included sworn statements from Paige and his mother. They described me as emotional, paranoid, and too unstable to care for Owen. Then Rebecca told me about the recording. Derek had submitted part of my call to my father. The court could hear me crying. The section where I explained the bus had been removed. That hurt more than the shouting outside. He had abandoned me after surgery, then used my pain as proof that I was unfit to be a mother. Later, I learned that some men do not need to strike a woman to make her afraid. They only need to convince others that her tears mean she cannot be trusted. Mental health should be protected in a controlling person's hands. It can become a weapon. The hearing was set for the next morning. I looked at Owen sleeping beside me. I would not fight online. I would fight with records, witnesses, and the truth. The next morning, I sat in my father's study with Rebecca beside me, and the hearing open on a laptop. Owen was in the next room with the nurse. My incision still pulled when I shifted in the chair, but for the first time, I did not feel small in front of Derek. His attorney spoke first. He described Derek as a frightened father, a chief executive under extreme pressure, and a man who had been denied access to his newborn son. He said my family had used money and influence to turn a private disagreement into a public attack. Rebecca did not argue about Derek's character. She presented the timeline. The hospital records showed that Derek had signed as the person responsible for taking me and Owen home. The exterior camera showed him placing cash in my hand before driving away. The transit record confirmed that I boarded the bus minutes later. His messages proved that he knew I had just undergone surgery. Then Rebecca read his first message after I left. It asked why his family had arrived to an empty refrigerator. It did not ask whether Owen was safe. Evelyn's statement described my pale face, shaking hands, and the way I pressed my palm against my abdomen whenever the bus stopped. My doctor confirmed that I showed no signs of being unable to care for my child. Then Rebecca played the complete recording of my call. My own voice filled the room. "Dad, he put me on a bus with Owen. I don't feel safe going back." No one spoke for several seconds. The judge asked Derek why the version he had submitted did not include that sentence. Derek said he had not edited anything. He suggested that his phone might have cut the recording by itself. Rebecca opened the technical report. The file had been processed through audio editing software on a computer owned by Northbridge. After that, the hearing was no longer about my word against his. It was about whether Derek could be trusted. The temporary order left Owen in my primary care. Derek could have supervised visits while the case was reviewed. All communication had to go through a court-approved parenting application or our attorneys. Neither side could post information about Owen. Derek was also ordered to stay away from my parents' home. I felt relief, but no joy. I once believed the louder person would always be believed. That morning, what protected me was not my family name, my clothes, or my tears. It was the small details I had been calm enough to preserve. Protecting myself did not require a louder story. It required a more accurate one. After the hearing, Rebecca received an email from Northbridge's audit committee. They had found the false email account created in my name. But that was not the most serious thing they had uncovered. And the evidence trail reached far beyond one signature. The audit committee's email contained more than the false account created in my name. The address had been opened from Derek's computer. My electronic signature had been copied from an old tax return. Payments labeled as consulting fees had gone to Page's company, even though there were no real reports or completed services. The auditors also found that Northbridge had counted future sales as current revenue. Company money had paid an apartment deposit, luxury vehicle rentals, and the dinner Derek took his family to after leaving me at the hospital. He had also told investors that Bennett Capital would support Northbridge for the long term. There was no document saying that. Once those facts were placed together, the company had nowhere left to hide. The board held an emergency meeting. Derek was suspended, then removed from daily control. The finance director agreed to cooperate with investigators. An interim executive was appointed, and the false signature records were sent to the bank and the proper authorities. The bank called back part of the loan. Northbridge entered bankruptcy protection, so the remaining healthy work could be separated from Derek's misconduct. Rebecca warned me that bankruptcy protection was not an escape from the investigation. It was a legal pause, meant to keep payroll moving while creditors, auditors, and the court examined what could still be saved. I asked my father not to pressure clients or partners outside the normal process. If there was anything honest left inside Northbridge, I wanted it protected. The employees had not forged my name. Their children should not lose grocery money because of what Derek had done. The company did not collapse because my family withdrew support. The withdrawal only forced people to look closely. What they found had already been there. Derek called that evening. He sounded frightened, but he still spoke as though I owed him a solution. "You can stop this," he said. "One call from your father can fix everything." "One call did not create those records, Derek." "You did." He promised to apologize. He said he would attend counseling, become a better husband, and be the father Owen deserved. All I had to do was sign a new support letter. That was when I understood he still saw remorse as a business transaction. Greed does not always begin with wanting more money. Sometimes it begins when a person decides that someone else's work, name, and sacrifice naturally belong to him. I could have asked my father to push harder. I could have tried to make every door close at once. I did not. I wanted the truth to decide what remained. 3 days later, Derek's attorney sent a proposal covering the divorce, the missing money, our property, and Owen's custody. There was one condition. Derek wanted to meet me face to face. 3 days later, I walked into a neutral mediation office with Rebecca beside me and a security officer outside. The room was plain, a wooden table, 2 pitchers of water, a recorder in the center, because both sides had agreed to preserve the meeting. My parents were not there. I did not need them to speak for me. Derek arrived 10 minutes late. He looked thinner, and the suit that once seemed part of his identity hung loosely from his shoulders. For a moment, I remembered the man who had once listened to me over cheap coffee. Then he began. He said he had loved me in the early years. He reminded me of our first apartment, our late-night walks, and the plans we made before Northbridge existed. I told him he may have loved the version of me who asked for little and questioned even less, but love could not survive without respect. When that failed, he blamed his family. He said his mother and Paige had pushed him to look successful. They expected him to provide, impress people, and protect the Cole name. I listened until he finished. They may have encouraged you, I said. But you created the email. You used my signature. You left Owen and me outside the hospital. His shoulders dropped, but only for a moment. Then he said a child needed his father. Owen needs a safe father more than he needs an unrestricted one. The agreement reflected that. I would remain Owen's primary caregiver and hold legal decision-making authority. Derek could have supervised visits under a schedule recommended by professionals. He would complete a parenting program and a psychological evaluation. So all communication would go through the court-approved parenting application. My property from before the marriage remained mine. Derek gave up any claim to the Maybach, the Bennett Trust, and related assets. Money moved without permission became a formal repayment obligation. The child support would be based on his actual income after bankruptcy. Neither of us could use Owen's name or image for publicity. The terms were firm, but they were not designed to erase him. Derek signed slowly. Then he looked at me and asked, "Was destroying me worth it?" I met his eyes. "I did not destroy you. I stopped protecting you from the consequences of what you did. There had been a time when I wanted him to feel every second of my pain. By then, I understood that dignity was not making someone kneel. It was standing again, without stepping on them. I no longer needed a perfect apology. I needed a safe ending." After we left, Walter placed the Maybach keys on the table and asked what I wanted done with the car. I stared at them. Knew I would never drive it again. The next morning, Walter had the Maybach brought to the front of the house. It looked exactly as it had before. Black paint polished smooth, windows dark, every surface shining as if nothing painful had ever happened inside or beside it. I walked toward the driver's door and placed my hand on the cold metal. The memories returned without warning. The $20 bill in my palm, the sound of the bus brakes, the pull of my incision each time the bus lurched forward. Owen's face beneath the thin blanket, Derek laughing through the glass. For a few seconds, I felt sorry for the woman I had been. She had kept waiting for kindness from someone who had already decided her comfort did not matter. I did not smash the car. I did not record a message for Derek. I did not need him to see what I was doing. I asked Walter to arrange a fair market sale through the proper channels. Every document would be recorded. Every dollar would be accounted for. Then I told him where the money should go. I wanted it used for mothers leaving controlling or abusive homes with young children. Not as one large donation with my name on a wall, but as practical help during the first frightening days. A safe hotel room for 72 hours. An infant car seat. Transportation to a doctor or attorney. Postpartum medication and follow-up care. A prepaid phone that could not be tracked by a controlling partner. A small deposit for a private bank account. Many women do not stay because they fail to understand what is happening. They stay because leaving requires money, transportation, childcare, and somewhere safe to sleep before morning. Financial independence is not always a fortune. Sometimes it is cab fare, one quiet night, and a phone no one else can search. That idea became Safe Harbor Foundation. I did not want us to simply hand out checks. I wanted the foundation to connect women with postpartum care, emergency housing, legal help, financial counseling, child care, job training, and guidance on preserving evidence. Evelyn agreed to advise us on postpartum needs. Rebecca began designing the legal assistance program. My parents offered the first funding, but I asked for an independent board. Safe Harbor could not become a family publicity project. It had to remain accountable to the women it served. When the Maybach was finally driven away, I did not feel as though I had lost anything. The car had once carried my humiliation. Now it would carry someone else toward safety. 1 year later, at the opening of Safe Harbor's first center, I met a man named Thomas Reed. But by then, I was no longer waiting for anyone to rescue me. 1 year later, Safe Harbor opened its first center in a renovated brick building near the train station. Every room had a purpose. There was a playroom for children, private counseling offices, a work area for mothers applying for jobs, and a clothing closet. A nurse used the clinic twice a week for postpartum checkups. Legal information was posted in several languages. Evelyn stood beside me for the ribbon cutting. Not a politician, not a famous donor. The woman who had seen me struggling on a city bus and asked the question I had been afraid to answer. Do you have someone safe to call? Owen was healthy and curious. Safe Harbor had already helped mothers find temporary rooms, transportation, attorneys, doctors, and bank accounts. Northbridge had been reorganized under new leadership. Derek no longer held a position there. The financial case continued through the proper channels. He attended some supervised visits with Owen, then missed others. When he came, I remained polite. I spoke only about our son. I stopped measuring my healing by how badly Derek was doing. Thomas Reed joined the foundation as an independent financial advisor. He did not flatter my family or turn my experience into a story for a brochure. He asked direct questions about the budget, our reserves, and whether the programs could survive without Bennett money. I respected that. Over the following months, he listened more than he spoke. He never tried to step into Owen's life. After one board meeting, he asked whether I would like to have coffee. I said yes. It was only coffee. That was enough. My new life had not begun when Thomas appeared. It began on the bus, when I called my father and believed that Owen and I deserved safety. That afternoon, I carried Owen down the main hallway. A small sign read, "You do not need permission to protect yourself." He wrapped his hand around my finger. Outside, a city bus passed. The sound once would have tightened my chest. This time, I watched it cross the intersection and kept walking. I once believed victory meant watching Derek lose his company, the car, and his power. I was wrong. Victory was no longer needing him to understand my worth. Silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it is the quiet moment when someone is watching, saving evidence, and preparing to walk away. Dignity is worth more than revenge. Independence gives a person the power to choose safety. After everything Grace endured, how satisfied are you with the way she protected Owen, preserved the evidence, and ended her marriage? Very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, or not satisfied? Please share your thoughts in the comments.